Welcome to another episode of the Left of Lansing podcast with Pat Johnston. A progressive insight into Michigan's political and cultural world. And of course, an entertaining podcast designed to shine a light on how to make Michigan's political machine work for the people. Now, from the Left of Lansing headquarters, located in his attic, here's the award-winning Pat Johnston.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to another installment of Michigan's premier progressive podcast. I am Pat Johnston, and I have to say I'm sorry, but I'm giving that Netflix version of the Four Seasons a B grade. No, not an A. I'm giving it a B. Maybe I should have given it a C+, but just a B. Look, it was fine, and there were some nice plot twists, and there were indeed some much-needed updated changes, thanks to Tina Fey, who wrote it. But the Alan Alda movie version with Carol Burnett is always going to be supreme. It's going to be better. Tina Fey was good, as always, but Will Forte didn't really have the gravitas to share the screen with her. I mean, that's the truth. But it's still worth the watch if you've got time. Yes, I sometimes disappear in a show or in a movie or a Tigers game for a little escapism. That is the nightmare we're living in, the nightmare of the Trump regime, part 2, the destruction of America from within. Yeah, not a catchy title, but hey, it works, and it's the truth. Coming up here in a few moments, I'm going to talk with Bob Thompson. Bob is the president of the Michigan Farmers Union, and I want to talk with him because I want to cover how Trump and Elon are hurting Michigan's farmers, rural Michiganders, and rural America as a whole. And they're doing it by arbitrarily and cruelly cutting much-needed agencies that serve farmers and help ensure that they can survive on a yearly basis. Elon and Dear Leader are indeed showing everyone how they've never, ever cared one bit about improving the lives of rural America. Trump and MAGA Republicans may always talk a big game, but they never deliver. Hell, last week I talked about how the MAGA Michigan Republican majority in the State House voted to repeal a bill allowing farmers to lease their own land for large-scale renewable energy projects, such as solar farms and wind farms. Despite the economic and environmental benefits for farmers and their land, these MAGA Michigan Republicans who run the State House listened to their fossil fuel donors and land developer donors as well, and said, the hell with the farmers. We don't want them making money to keep their own land by helping Michigan become carbon neutral. No way. We want to keep our foot on their throats and say property rights. You farmers don't deserve property rights. We believe in freedom, and property rights are only for the elite class that pays off our campaigns. That's the MAGA Michigan Republican Party motivation. All right? It's fulfilling every wish of their donor base, which means at the same time, it's all about hurting farmers. I mean, that's what MAGA Michigan Republicans, like my state senator, Roger Hogg, who's made quite a career in Lansing despite hating the government, that's what he's doing. He's in agriculture, yet he's been against allowing his fellow farmers from using their own land as part of renewable energy. He said back in 2023 that he voted against the original renewable energy siting bill, saying that most downstate Democrats will never have to see wind or solar farms. Yeah, when I drive down the state, by the way, I see all kinds of solar farms, just saying. And I live in Gratiot County, and the wind farms not only have provided energy for thousands of Michiganders, but they've helped my county repave roads and pay for new infrastructure upgrades thanks to the taxes that we're collecting. And if farmers were against them, they wouldn't allow wind or solar farms on their land. Yet they seem to be all for them. And what does State Senator Roger Hogg mean when he says people downstate won't have to see wind farms? What? Coal-fired power plants provide the most beautiful and idyllic purviews of pure Michigan? Guys like Roger Hogg claim to love freedom, but then they just want to strip away the property rights of his fellow farmers? What? Where's the freedom in that? Although he's celebrating having Dear Leader and Elon in power and doesn't seem to care about the freedom being stripped away from thousands, or how Republicans are busy ripping away Medicaid from thousands of his own constituents. I'll have more to say on Roger Hawk in my Left of Lansing Last Call, don't you worry. But in the Michigan legislature, MAGA Republicans are busy pushing nonsensical, brain vacuum-sucking bills like declaring the Gulf of America or attacking parents who are seeking treatments for transgender kids. Again, I thought parents were always to be trusted. Or they're busy trying to end DEI because average white guys seemingly are getting upset that there are some programs designed out there recognizing that many people might be more qualified than them. These are the same people who love and high-five each other when people are being kidnapped off the streets in America and sent to gulags without due process, but at the same time celebrate how Dear Leader is bringing in some 60 white South Africans to our country as refugees. Now that's strange. I thought we were against refugees coming to this country, like Afghani refugees, many of whom helped us during the war. You see, white supremacy is on full display for sure, as Dear Leader justified this move, bringing in these white South Africans by utilizing debunked racist conspiracy theories that white Africans are suffering a genocide and that their farms are being destroyed. All of these claims are being debunked, but this is white supremacy. And then the same America First people wave the flag, but have zero problem with the fact that we're sending billions of dollars in weaponry to the right-wing Israeli government so that way they can kill Palestinian families while at the same time ripping away Medicaid from millions of their own citizens. Because that's what's happening in this country right now. Other than identity politics, MAGA Republicanism has nothing to offer of substance to the American people and to Michiganders. I mean, I've mentioned twice how congressional Republicans are working on ripping away Medicaid from some 13 million Americans. 13 million! We've got nearly 3 million who depend on Medicaid in Michigan, but Republicans are leading the charge to damage nearly 750,000 lives in the state who depend on Medicaid. That's 750,000 people, everyone, who are at risk seeing their health care vanish just like that. By the way, 1 million Michigan children rely on Medicaid, pro-life. Now, as State Line's Shalina Chatlani reported, congressional Republicans in D.C. are working on slashing Medicaid funding so that it'll force states to have to cut back on their own Medicaid funding. Chatlani writes, any federal cuts to Medicaid, large or small, would strain state budgets and likely lead to service cuts and coverage for fewer people, according to a new analysis released last week by the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. And, that's the whole point of this exercise, because it's all about granting trillions of dollars of tax cuts to their elite donor base and for tech bros like Elon Musk. Strange how that happens, isn't it? Now, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, to her credit, ordered the Michigan Health Department to release data on what this could mean for the state of Michigan if Trump, Elon, and MAGA Republicans end up gutting Medicaid. And it would hurt seniors. It would hurt people with disabilities. Oh, and here's a nice little goodie for everyone. It would mean massive cuts to rural hospitals. But they're the party of the working class. Hey, did you know that over 60% of births in rural hospitals are covered by, you guessed it, Medicaid? Now again, what's all that talk about being the pro-life party? Again, all this is being done to pay to enrich Elon Musk and Betsy DeVos. Well, and this is also about attacking women, because punishing women for having sex is what the white Christian nationalist mind is all about. The sick mind is all about. But it can't be that obvious for the voters, you see. So MAGA Republicans, they understand how unpopular this would be, the gutting of Medicaid for millions of people across the country. So they need an out. And Michigan Congresswoman Lisa McClain, who does whatever her dear leader demands, believes that she found out that way. And what's that way? Well, that's saying all that these Republicans are trying to do is going after all of those lazy freeloaders who just refuse to work for their Medicaid. Lisa McClain tweeted, and I'm amazed she knows how to type. She said, We want to help capable and unemployed adults move from dependency to self-sufficiency. Yes, let's try to divide the people just enough so Republicans can funnel trillions of dollars back to their corporate donor benefactors, back to Elon Musk, back to Donald Trump and his family. By the way, according to Kaiser, 64% of Medicaid recipients work either full-time or part-time. So that means that's a majority of Americans who receive Medicaid are working. And guess what? There aren't work requirements. 12% aren't working because they're caregivers, 10% are not working because of disability, 7% are in school, and 8% aren't working due to becoming retired or unable to find work or other reasons. And I'm just so sick and tired of these MAGA Republicans claiming to be Christians while they rip away health care from hardworking Michiganders and hardworking Americans. This is not the working class party. Let me also mention, this would put a strain on states even more if work requirements were put into place, since then you would have to hire someone, you would have to hire people to ensure that all of these work requirements were being met. So how's that? Less government again? Oh, and that State Line story also said that between $4 billion and $6 billion in annual Medicaid spending helps pay for school-based health services, including routine health screenings, preventative care, mental health care, and physical, speech, and occupational therapies. Again, though, this is your pro-life crowd in action. How can MAGA Michigan Republican John James, the Congressman John James, who's running for governor here in Michigan, while apparently collecting millions in campaign cash from the DeVos family, a family who will benefit greatly by cutting Medicaid so that way they can get their lavish tax cuts, how can John James vote to hurt his constituents and then also vote to hurt Michiganders on Medicaid? I cannot imagine that will look good on a campaign ad. We all know people who rely on Medicaid. We all know people who rely on Medicaid. And so while Republicans try to divide America by saying they're only going after the so-called freeloaders, remember, they need us to divide ourselves in order to give Betsy DeVos's family more money while ripping it out of the pockets of everybody else. And for Lisa McClain claiming that this is about making sure people are working, I find it absolutely hilarious and downright sickening that she could say such a lie with a straight face. Well, okay, wait, maybe I shouldn't be that surprised. But it's rich for MAGA Republicans to preach about work and the value of work while Congress enjoys many elongated and lobbyist-paid vacations. But how many vacations do they get? How many votes do they miss? But yet they're going to sit there and lecture to us about the value of work? Are you kidding me? So wait, if they miss votes, does that mean that their top-notch healthcare coverage gets ripped away by us? I mean, it would only seem fair, right? Now, let me just tell you, there is one way to let your congressman or congresswoman know how you feel about them gutting Medicaid, food stamps, Social Security, agriculture, and public schools. There's an organization called 5 Calls. That's 5calls.org. 5calls.org. They provide numbers and scripts for you to follow as you call your representative, and I will provide the link wherever you are hearing this. And like LOL GOP said on his site called The Farce, this is about the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, becoming empowered to hurt the working class kids across the country. It's oligarchy, everyone. It is the oligarchy. And it's why the oligarchy backed your leader and his regime to get back into power. It's why Rick Snyder and many of his rich friends paid lots of money to get MAGA Republicans back into the state house majority. It's always about the oligarchy. Now, getting back to Governor Whitmer, I applaud her for ordering the Department of Health to release all that data on who will be hit hard by the Republican crusade against Medicaid and keeping the working class healthy. However, a few weeks ago, we saw Whitmer hang out with Dear Leader to keep Selfridge Base open in Macomb County, and she was everywhere. She was everywhere, doing interviews, doing social media hits, and whatever else to tout her bipartisan work with the guy who was found liable for sexual assault of a woman and the guy who was found guilty of 34 felonies. But, and I don't think I'm nitpicking here, where is Whitmer when it comes to protecting the hundreds of thousands who are in danger of losing their Medicaid and their food stamps and their Social Security? Where is she? Why is she not doing interview after interview after interview? She's the governor of the state of Michigan, a pretty important and influential spot in today's political climate. She could be on the TV. She could be on the YouTube. She could be on progressive podcasts. Hell, middle of the road podcasts. I don't care. Demanding and taking the battle to Trump and Elon and the Republicans for attacking the working class and the most vulnerable in her state. She could be taking the bully pulpit right now and fighting back against what's happening right now. She could be denouncing the oligarchy that rules the White House and the MAGA Republican Party. She could be a champion of the people, a champion of the working class, and being as willing to appear anywhere, just as she did when she worked with the guy who's attacking the well-being and the economic future of her state. But she's silent. Or how about this? Okay, she could have said something about this. Dear Leaders EPA announced this week that it plans to weaken limits on some forever chemicals in drinking water that were finalized last year. The AP reports the Biden administration put these limits in place, but now they're being disappeared. Hey, kind of like people. In Michigan, there's been so much work done on these forever chemicals for the past decade, and they're called PFAS. And there's been work done on how to get rid of them from our groundwater throughout the state. I can't believe how many sites had PFAS in the water. But now, dear leaders, saying more PFAS in our drinking water and no more fluoride either. So more cancer with less teeth. Hey, that would be a great campaign sticker right there. Where's Governor Whitmer taking it to dear leader on that issue? An issue she indicated she cared about. And maybe it's instances like this lack of courage, this lack of leadership. Maybe this helps explain stories such as this. A new poll conducted earlier this month by the Associated Press Nork Center for Public Affairs Research found that only about 1/3 of Democrats are very optimistic or even somewhat optimistic about their party's future. That's down sharply from July of 2024, when about 6 in 10 Democrats said they had a positive outlook. Wow, that is a major, major drop right there. A lot of people are not really high on the Democratic Party right now. They are feeling demoralized. Why? Because we need leaders to lead. But it seems like the people are the only ones leading right now, while corporate authoritarianism takes over the government, while oligarchy takes over the government. And by the way, where are the libertarians? Libertarians, where are you? Libertarians, where are you? I mean, you guys talked over and over and over through the years about authoritarianism, but now you're nowhere to be found at the very moment when that reality is happening. But I digress. Getting back to what I was saying, we need leaders. And that's why I applaud Democratic National Party Vice Chair David Hogg for refusing to sit back and let the same old, and I mean old, party leaders continue their zombie walk as the country burns. But because David Hogg had the temerity to attack those comfy Democrats from comfy districts, doing whatever it takes to avoid making people feel uncomfortable, the party's now, of course, trying to oust him. And it's so absurd and freaking upsetting because this is the same party, everyone, who used David Hogg and his friends from the March for Our Lives movement back in 2018 to drive younger voters back to the Democrats. They relied on the March for Our Lives people to help deliver the youth vote for 3 straight elections. Democrats put their arms around David, around Emma X, and around all the others who put together a movement that was built from tragedy. And it's because of them that some gun safety bills passed in some states, including right here in Michigan. But now, since David Hogg rightly criticized old guys like South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn, who complained about not knowing what he would do if he had to retire, since Hogg criticized him, the party wants him out. The same party who encouraged Hogg and those kids back in 2018 to challenge authority, to challenge the status quo, to challenge the gridlock, and to refuse to take no for an answer. This is the same party now lining up to punish Hogg for doing what they told him to do. Authoritarianism is taking over, or has taken over, and the MAGA Republican Party seems to be so over democracy. They don't want democracy anymore. Power is all they want. As Noah Bertlasky wrote this week, Trump is just an extension of past GOP policies, a distillation of the party's long-standing mix of white supremacy and oligarchy. And that's right. If he were to pass away tomorrow, If Trump were to pass away tomorrow, the MAGA Republican Party would continue to run along without him. Some Democrats have this longing for the days of Eisenhower Republicans, but those days are gone. They are dead. We're in a fight for the nation's future, and that means fighting Trump and Elon while also fighting for the future direction of progressivism and, yes, the Democratic Party. The people are tired of inaction, and worse, they are tired of lip service. Michigan Democratic Senator Alyssa Slotkin can say that she's about fighting for democracy, but yet at the same time, she's lending her support for a MAGA Republican cryptocurrency bill that big tech is backing and will help keep the Trump regime continuing to build on their crypto empire. What is she doing? I mean, that's what the people are fed up with. That's why they're so pessimistic of the current Democratic Party leadership. The fight for the direction of the party is also at stake, everyone. And judging where these so-called moderates, the moderate wing of the party, have taken all of us, one can understand why a majority of Democrats have a low opinion of their party. In the meantime, we've got regular people out there doing what some Democratic leaders refuse to do. Lead. They are leading to save the working class and leading to save democracy. The Michigan Farmers Union is one of those organizations that's been standing up for family farmers, and they've been sounding the alarms of Trump and Elon's attacks on farmers since those guys took office. Bob Thompson, president of the Michigan Farmers Union, is standing by, and he'll be up here in just a moment. You are listening to LOL.
A podcast that believes in using common sense to move Michigan into the future. And by common sense, we mean progressive sense. We've all seen what 40 years of Republican leadership did to this state, and we refuse to go back. It's Left of Lansing with Pat Johnston. You can follow Pat on Facebook or X, Pat still calls it Twitter, or on the Gram, Threads, and also on YouTube. Subscribe to the show on YouTube and wherever else you listen to your podcasts. All right, I think we gave Pat enough time to catch his breath. Let's get back to it. Here's Pat Johnston.
A special thanks and a heartfelt thanks, actually, to my great friend and show voice, Jessica, for all that she's done here for the podcast over these last couple of years. It was awesome getting to catch up with her at one of our favorite watering holes in Saginaw last week, and she's such a terrific person to hang out with. So, Jessica, just make sure that you know that I am going to hold you to that promise that you're going to do more liners for us here soon. You can always email me, leftoflansing@gmail.com, and tell me where you think that I'm right on, or maybe where I'm on track but not completely correct, or where you think I might just be some clown with a microphone, which might actually be true. But I love getting the feedback from all of you, and I thank you for helping spread the word about Left of Lansing throughout Michigan and the country. We've been talking a lot about tariffs and how they affect the auto industry, since we live in Michigan, of course. But I'd like to switch to another one of Michigan's large industries here, agriculture, and how these first 4+ months of Trump and Elon Musk are hitting Michigan farmers. And I can't think of anyone better to talk with about these issues than Bob Thompson, who is the president of the Michigan Farmers Union. Bob, thanks so much for taking some time to join Left of Lansing this week. I appreciate it.
Not a problem, Pat. It's my pleasure.
Just in case there are some who aren't quite familiar with everything that you guys do there at the Michigan Farmers Union, can you talk about the union here for a bit?
Well, the union is more properly formally named the National Educational and Cooperative Union of America. It was created back in 1902 when there were significant so-called robber barons around. And we joined together as a group to fight those types of big corporate structures that exist today, quite frankly. The Michigan Farmers Union was actually created and joined the National in 1934, and we've been a presence in Michigan ever since.
Well, people may say, maybe at times will say, does history really repeat itself? And you just mentioned robber barons there at the turn of the 20th century, and it seems like we're kind of there again right now, a new gilded age here. So let's talk about that just a little bit, and maybe talk about Trump's across-the-board tariffs on basically everyone, including that whopping 145% tariff on China, which they have rolled back to 30%. That's still quite significant, as both countries did call for this 90-day truce. This is what I remember working when I used to work for the Michigan Farm Radio Network. Volatility is usually the last thing that farmers really want and really need. So how is this tariff war exactly helping anyone in farming at the moment?
In a word, it's not. Tariffs, when applied surgically to various crops, and I'm thinking of our cherry producers, blueberry producers in particular, you can make some strides there. But the idea of the shotgun approach across the board tariffs that until just recently were horrendous, 30% still is nothing to sneeze at. It drives the cost up for the products that we use, and it is going to have a significant effect when we are marketing this fall.
And you brought up a great point there. I mean, I think there are many, and especially those maybe on the left side of the whole political aisle or political spectrum, who at one point, like myself, always advocated that if it's done surgically, tariffs can be used for some good, like you said, for our cherry farmers up north, for instance. So that seems like that is always the wise approach. What surprises me, Bob, is that we've done this before. In 2018, when we were dealing with Trump, the first administration, we did this before, and it didn't work out for farmers. It just blows my mind that we're doing this again.
I couldn't agree with you more. The only reason that the ag community came out maybe break even on the deal was the somewhere in the neighborhood of $23 billion that was spent in subsidies to replace monies that should have been available to the farmers through the marketplaces, through the trade deals that we had as an industry had created over decades. And we lost those trading partners. In a word, they're looking for other more stable markets. China, for an example, during Trump 1.0, when that tariff went into effect, they went to Brazil and some of the South American other countries, actually created port and ships to get Brazilian soybeans to China instead of the U.S. And we see that happening again right now, that a number of countries that have been hit with these tariffs are not particularly looking to negotiate. They're looking for other sources that will lend stability to their side of the world. We lack that stability at this point.
I'd say so. Now, Bob, the reason we were told, or at least I thought the reason that we were going through with all these tariffs was that we were supposed to bring in all this manufacturing, which meant these tariffs would remain in place in perpetuity, since that's kind of what it would take, I thought, to get manufacturing back here, if that was really, really the goal. But I don't think that really was the goal. In fact, I'm confused at what this goal was all about. What's your take on that?
Well, I share your confusion. I think the idea of bringing back manufacturing is certainly philosophically a good idea.
Right.
The practicality of it, I just don't see. I see where, in order to do that, you're going to have to ramp up the manufacturing here, build factories, et cetera, and then you're going to have a stable workforce that's willing to work for whatever wages to do that. It's going to be very difficult to operate factories in the United States at the same wage rate that they're working at in Thailand or Vietnam or China, Japan, any of those countries.
Is it my understanding that when we went through Trump's tariff battle with China back in 2018, many farms had to declare bankruptcy in 2019, and that while many small and medium-sized farms continue to struggle, Trump's bailout program for farmers essentially served as more of a payout to big ag corporations than really helping small and medium-sized farmers?
Well, many of the programs that are available to farmers are structured around how many acres you're farming, or how many acres you're planting anyway. So by that metric, the small farmer is certainly getting less than the mega farm, just on that basis, that if you've got a farm that's got 10,000, 20,000 acres, they're certainly going to get more than myself, around 150 to 200 acres. So it isn't necessarily that the big are getting proportionately more. but they are certainly getting a larger share than we think they should, from the standpoint that we believe that as an organization, we believe that the bigger is better is not the right mantra. We need to have programs, policies, regulations that support an independent family farm to be able to enjoy a reasonable income lifestyle, as opposed to get big or get out mantra that has been in effect for a number of years now.
If you don't mind, let's talk about some other ways that farmers, especially in Michigan, are feeling the impacts by both Trump and Elon Musk. Elon is busy cutting essential programs for the first few months. Elon and his tech bro gang have been busy gutting government programs that farmers rely on. I mean, for instance, the gutting of the USAID program. I mean, sure, there may have been some initiatives in USAID that could have been looked at, but I don't understand the eliminating of an entire program that provided billions in spending for farmers. I don't recall the eliminating of important programs like USAID being a big campaign slogan in rural America during 2024. Can you talk about how gutting a program like USAID and other agencies, obviously we're seeing cuts in the USDA. I mean, can you talk about how that will hurt farmers and the farming community in the long run?
Well, taking just the USAID program structure, there was a significant amount of wheat in particular that was grown in this country that was utilized by USAID to help alleviate hunger in all corners of the world. And to just arbitrarily throw that under the bus and say it's just unnecessary, unneeded, is, in my personal opinion, ludicrous. I think the fact that these agency cuts, USDA, the Farm Service Agency, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, in particular, those two are two that I know very well because I worked for the Farm Service Agency at a point in time as a county level manager here in Isabella County. The way that they have gone about slash and burn chainsaw has been ridiculous. There have been any number of attempts over the 33-year career that I had to make things better, more efficient, cut waste, et cetera, but it was always done with an eye towards what you are trying to provide as a public service versus the public need to not pay any more in taxes than they can help. Most of those agencies probably run on about a 12% cost of administration, and some of them run less than that. I know our agency back in the 90s, early 2000s, the figure was about 5% personnel cost for the amount of work and benefit that was getting out to the local farmers. While farmers would be the last ones to ask for that money, subsidies, even cost share, although cost share is certainly reasonable to expect, we would rather make it in the marketplace. And that's where you need to have the policies, regulations, procedures to allow the smaller family farms to exist.
And that's why an outsider like me didn't really understand these cuts to programs like USAID. All that really did was eliminate marketplace choices for the farming community. It didn't make sense why they were gutting these kinds of programs that help farmers, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
The reality is that anybody that's ever been in any of those types of offices recognizes that a newbie, a novice, does not just walk in the door, know everything immediately. It takes months, couple of years to really fully understand what the programs are, how they're operated, how you might be able to make them better, et cetera, et cetera. And the current administration immediately getting rid of all the inspectors generals across the board who were the watchdogs of the various departments and agencies made absolutely no sense.
But Bob, Elon is one of the smartest people in the world. Are you questioning his his expertise?
Yes.
Hey, last week I interviewed Anna Clark, a reporter for ProPublica, and she did a story on Elon's slashing of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association and how that's leading to the cutting of jobs in the Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory. And that lab, just for our listeners, if you guys didn't hear that episode, please go back to last week's episode and listen to it. It was really good. But that lab works on not just keeping the Great Lakes clean and safe through all the research that it does, but it also provides important weather information that, as she put in her story, benefits Michigan's farmers. If these cuts do continue and they go forward with them, I mean, how will that affect farmers who utilize those weather reports for their farms?
Well, it's going to have an adverse effect. I cut a lot of hay for hopefully some profit. When I was growing up, you looked out the window and made a decision. Now you've got the availability of NOAA and the various weather services to help you decide whether or not to cut hay on a particular day or plant or put spray down. Without that resource, it's going to make things more difficult to really make informed decisions. And it isn't just the NOAA, it's the research programs at Michigan State University, being one of the premier land grant universities in the country, losing funding for research projects that are ongoing, that you can't just stop and start back up. You need to have the consistency, the stability to continue research in a whole host of areas. Crop development, how plants react to pesticides and fertilizers and all of that, to just with the stroke of a pen say this isn't worthy is, again, the word I use is ludicrous.
Yeah, that's a good word to use to describe the times that we're in right now here, Bob. Look, I know that I have kept you a lot longer than I asked, so if I could just have you answer one more question. We know that rural America and a lot of farmers supported putting these people into power. And I was wondering, since a lot of their policies have had adverse effects on the farming community and rural Michiganders and America, what advice would you give progressives on finding ways to more effectively message and connect with farmers and rural America? If you have any advice there, Bob, we are all ears.
To begin with, Michigan Farmers Union is a nonpartisan organization. We welcome everyone and anyone that subscribes to our core philosophy, providing all the assistance through education, legislation, or co-ops, cooperation with the smaller family farm operations. Now, having said that, the Farmers Union is built from the ground up, grassroots. Our membership meets once a year and either creates or adds to our policy document. And then that's what the officers like myself then follow for the coming year. As a group, we will be considerably more progressive than some of the other farm groups. We are nationally, the Farmers Union is the second largest general commodity group in the country. We're very proud of that. I would, number one, ask people to join Farmers Union. We need the members. We're always looking for advice and counsel. I think to answer your question, or the Democrat with a small d, we all need to fight the tendency to move away from a democratically run government. As it would appear at this point, there's certainly more tendency towards authoritarianism than there is democracy in a lot of different ways. Those of us of a like mind clearly need to join together, and whether it's the word union or co-op or cooperation, we need to stand together, and hopefully we can come out of this.
Well, with people like you, I have hope that we will be able to get out of this. So, Bob Thompson from the Michigan Farmers Union, thank you so very much for spending your valuable time here on Left of Lansing, and I'd love to have you back on again in the future, if that's okay.
Anytime. I appreciate the offer. Thank you.
This isn't a conservative podcast. We actually believe in freedom here. And we don't lose sleep over solar panels either. It's Left of Lansing with Pat Johnston. Don't forget, we're on YouTube now. Subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever else you get your podcasts. Tell Pat what you think of the show by contacting him at leftoflansing@gmail.com. Now, let's get back to the show with Pat Johnston.
Hey, thanks again to Bob Thompson from the Michigan Farmers Union for coming on here this week. We've talked about how there's strength in numbers when it comes to standing up to the MAGA movement. Strength in numbers is one of the important aspects of building a movement because strength in numbers can begin a stronger and more vibrant progressive movement. And you heard Bob implore small farmers out there to join the union and fight back against Big Ag and also the benefits that Big Ag receives via this regime. And you heard Bob talk about how small farmers and rural Michiganders are being hung out to dry by this regime. So please check out the work the Michigan Farmers Union is doing and join up. I mean, come on. The Michigan Farm Bureau cannot be the only game in town since its primary goal is pushing the Big Ag agenda. Time now for the Left of Lansing Last Call. I just had to give a minute or two of attention to something that's been talked about by the Lansing media intelligentsia here recently. During the last few episodes of the Off the Record program with longtime reporter Tim Skubic, he and his panel of other reporters, journalists, and opinion makers have been laboring over the need of getting state workers back to Lansing on a full-time basis. And some of them are so happy that MAGA Republican Speaker of the House, Matt Hall, is proposing in the state budget that state workers come back to Lansing 5 days a week. Apparently, Hall and MAGA Republicans aren't convinced that state workers are putting in a good old honest day's work. You know, like all of the MAGA Republicans do in the state house. Nobody enjoys a shorter work week. Nobody enjoys a longer vacation time, right? Right? And since Whitmer's office isn't providing info on how many workers are at home versus how many are in offices, Matt Hall says everyone must come back to work. Work, work, work. Name and number. Work. Now, he doesn't have the final say, thankfully, since the Democratic Party-controlled state Senate would not probably agree to those terms, I think. So that's good. But many businesses are allowing their employees to work sometime at home and sometimes in the office, on a hybrid basis. Some allow their workers to work full-time at home. So since these private sectors are doing it, perhaps the only way to get qualified people to work in state government is by giving them the same kind of deal, you think? The MAGA Republicans don't believe in that. And here's my aforementioned state senator Roger Hawk in a video where he's standing in an empty parking lot in Lansing asking, where are the workers?
As you can see, we have this empty parking lot because none of the state employers are required to come back to work. We could at least put some pickleball courts and basketball hoops out here so somebody could enjoy it.
Cool. Now, it seems like Raj and Matt Hall want to act like one of my old bosses who would walk around all day long to make sure that people were working every second of the day. I swear, that was most of his job. And I used to think that's how he'd probably get 10,000 steps a day. But that kind of spying didn't help productivity. It just made people resentful. That's why I loved working from home, though, too, because I wasn't treated like a child, and I got my work done on a more efficient basis. We didn't have to do endless, needless meetings. Oh, God, I hate meetings after meetings after meetings. And look, I understand. We could pick one study showing productivity goes up working from home or goes up working from the office. But COVID taught us how the old system, thanks to the World Wide Web, didn't have to be followed anymore. And if state workers aren't doing their jobs for the most part, then they would get canned. But here's my favorite part from that off-the-record show from a couple of weeks ago with the Lansing City Pulse's Kyle Malin complaining how working from home has created, listen to this, less traffic in Lansing.
So our offices are right across the street from a parking lot. And if it was 5:15, there was no way you were leaving our parking lot. It was a complete gridlock, cars backed all the way up. Nowadays, I could leave at 5:15 and I could be home in 3 minutes.
Yeah. Kyle, my boy, you are illustrating the very point of why people don't want to drive to work each and every day. The way you just described it was absolute torture, because without significant public transit or a rail system, people are needlessly stuck in traffic trying to get to and from their office jobs. How is that efficient? How is that good for anybody? The Guardian reported back in September 2023, employees in the U.S. who worked from home all the time were predicted to reduce their emissions by 54% compared with workers in an office. And this was from a study by the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Studies that Elon Musk wants to slash, by the way. So we know working from home, it's better for the environment. And let's be honest, it's better for our mental health to work from home, at least on a hybrid basis. So why is it the so-called working class party, the MAGA Republican Party, always wants to go after the working class and always shows its disdain for the working class and always shows its distrust for the working class? Because they don't trust workers. They don't work for workers. They work for their corporate donor class.
You're listening to the Left of Lansing podcast. The music you're hearing is by Wanderbeats. To hear the latest project, check out Space Leopard on your favorite streaming site. Now back to our favorite progressive voice in Michigan. It's Pat Johnston.
That's going to do it for this edition of The Left of Lansing. Please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and please subscribe to the show on YouTube. Subscriptions are vital to we podcasters, so please subscribe. And if you don't mind, give the show a good review and let others know about Michigan's premier progressive podcast so we can share progressive values, progressive messages, and progressive ideals across the state of Michigan and the country. Remember, progressive ideals are common sense ideals. You can always email me, leftoflansing@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and until next week, remember, take the battle to them. Thank you, Michigan.
The Left of Lansing podcast was produced by Pat Johnston, written by Pat Johnston, researched by Pat Johnston, edited by Pat Johnston, and hosted by, yes, Pat Johnston. Technical assistance by Dr. Heather. And thanks to our good friend Kirsten for the awesome podcast logo. Remember to visit leftoflansing.com for more news and information. Thanks again for listening to the Left of Lansing podcast.